For if, in fact, the very foundation of their faith, that Jesus was the Messiah, that he was the Son of God, if, in fact, that was true, then who best to represent the divinity than the offspring of Jesus himself? And so it is our suggestion that the Holy Roman Church launched the Crusades not to save the Holy Land, not from some altruistic and benevolent intent, but in fact to descend on the Holy Land, to seize it and prevent the descendants of Jesus from proclaiming themselves. There was a hunt to find the holy blood, to find the grail, the vessels of the holy blood, and to terminate their existence. It is our suggestion that the Crusades were an illusion, an attempt to stop the return of the divinity's offspring to the throne of the Holy Land. Ladies and gentlemen, I suggest to you that we have been deceived, we have been manipulated, and we have been cheated. Jesus did not die on the cross. Evidence is much more strongly in the favor of that conclusion than that he died. This does not in any way, shape, or form remove the teachings and the meanings behind his words. It does, however, remove the power foundation of an institution which has become the single most powerful and richest institution on our planet. Please, examine the Dead Sea Scrolls deception, Holy Blood, Holy Grail, Jesus and the riddle of the Dead Sea Scrolls, the Jesus conspiracy, the Passover plot, those incredible Christians, the Messianic legacy, and on and on and on. After the epoch in which Jesus was supposedly crucified, for the next 300 years, followers of Jesus, those who had been branded outlaws, found themselves scattered throughout the Holy Land. According to research, the efforts to produce the Gospels did not occur until nearly 80 years later. The epoch, the era, was confusing. There were apprentices, there were disciples, there were rabbis, there were people who were telling numerous stories. In fact, it is said that there were nearly 200 holy Gospels, holy books, about Jesus, about the Messiah, about the Son of God. Roughly 300 years later, a king rose to power in Rome. He was known as Constantine. Constantine, attempting to produce a one-world empire, sought to make Christianity the official religion of the empire. Why? Because the Christians, so diverse in their beliefs and so confused, seeking to survive, were willing to accept pagan holidays, pagan thoughts, were willing to twist the religion into anything necessary for their own survival. As you know, there are those people of that time who simply did not accept Jesus as the Messiah, and they did so with strong evidence. Constantine also believed that Jesus had not fulfilled the prophecies of the Messiah. In fact, Constantine believed that he was the actual Messiah, that he had fulfilled the prophecies far better, far more strongly than Jesus ever could have. He was the emperor of Rome. The early Christian followers, willing to accept Constantine to some degree, were called together. Constantine gathered together approximately 1,500 religious scholars of the time, experts in the Gospels, experts in the stories. He gathered them together in 325 AD, and he produced an event known as the Council of Nicaea. He addressed the council and ask them to proclaim him the Messiah, to produce those stories which would prove his divinity. Nearly 1,200 of the attending Hebrew Christian scholars rejected immediately the idea that Constantine was the Messiah. Constantine, true to political tradition, immediately expelled the 1,200 who did not follow his will. They were cast out, and less than 300 so-called experts remained. And they very willingly gathered together the stories, the Gospels, which supported the possibility that Constantine was the Messiah. In their political effort, they tossed out books like the Book of Mary, the Book of Enoch, other books which you can find today. They're known as the apocryphal books or the lost books of the Garden of Eden. These are books that were rejected. Those books, which were considered to be the official storyline of Constantine and the Roman Empire, became what we now know as the Holy Bible. Curiously, one of the books that was tossed out, the Book of Enoch, is one that Jesus quotes from in the Bible itself. Yet it was considered to be invalid, that it simply could not be a religious effort, a work of God. The Book of Mary was also tossed out. Ladies and gentlemen, I suggest to you that the creation of the Bible, the creation of Christianity, was a political effort, both by those Christians who wanted power and one King Constantine. The Council of Nicaea in 325 A.D. can be researched very, very carefully. The Romans were very good at keeping records, and what I have just suggested to you can be found in numerous sources. The Bible and the Christian Church were a political effort. What happens over the next few hundred years was not an expansion of a well-received church, of a well-received religion. Christianity did not expand because individuals came to the church freely, seeing the wonder and the glory of the religion. In fact, they were forced to accept. They were forced to follow the edicts of the church and Constantine, or they were simply terminated. The valid teachings, the valid words of a teacher of righteousness had become the instruments of a political organization. Over the next few hundred years, by force, by might, and by extermination, the Christian church grew under the guidance of several popes whose history lays on the dark side. As I mentioned a little bit ago, the Crusades were started by the Holy Christian Church in an effort to seek out and find the descendants of Jesus and Mary. We have in approximately 1100 A.D. the creation of a new group. This group was known as the Knights Templar, the Knights of the Temple. Formed by Sir Hugh Payens, these 9 warrior monks were brought together in order to protect the pilgrims on their travels to the holy city of Jerusalem. Prior to their existence, Arab thieves, robbers, would descend upon these holy pilgrims and would take away their gifts, would take away their money, and they simply looted the highway bandits of the holy road to Jerusalem. Under the guidance of Sir Hugh Payens, these 9 warrior monks patrolled the highways, patrolled the roads, and they protected the pilgrims. So well received were they by some of the Europeans that they were granted the actual Temple of King Solomon as their headquarters. Now, the Knights Templar have a very curious history. There are some people who consider them to be a secret society, others who consider them to be wonderful examples of knighthood. Generally, however, the history books do not treat the Templars very well. In our research, it appears that in the temple of King Solomon, the Knights Templar, by digging through the floor, by exploring the chambers hidden underneath, it is very likely that they in fact discovered the treasure known as the gold of King Solomon. Because after less than 20 years of being in existence, the Knights suddenly had extraordinary wealth. Originally, they were so poor that they often shared one horse. In fact, the Templar seal shows two knights on horseback astride one warrior steed. Their oaths were that of poverty. They could not smile. They could not enjoy. They were celibate. They were poor. And yet 20 years later, they lived at the height of luxury and wealth. But their power expanded. They brought more knights into their group. And in time, they were so extraordinarily received by the Europeans that lords and princes by the dozens flocked to join the order. The Knights Templar, because the Vatican, because the Christian Church did not have a standing army of its own, the Knights Templar were received as the unofficial militia of the Christian Church. Through the church sanctions, they were given the ability to deal in money lending, in essentially the banking traditions that are being used today. It is with no great stretch of the imagination that we can suggest that the Knights Templar may very likely have begun many of the banking institutions of Europe, and that they funded and underwrote some of the families. Because in the normal course of events, families with great wealth can find themselves teetering on insolvency. And it was the Templar Knights who came to their rescue. Over the hundreds of years of their existence, 200 years, they were able to become an extraordinary power. They were able to manipulate the purse strings of the European community. However, something very odd occurred with the Templar Knights, because towards the end of their existence, they were accused of heinous charges. Some of the more outrageous claims made against them is that they trampled on the crucifix and that they spat on the image of Jesus hanging from the cross. Philip the Fair, King of France, with a pope who was beholding to him, bribed some knights who were in prison, ex-knights, and through devious and totally false charges was able to bring the Templar Knights down. The accusations flew, and the Templars were undone. Why would a society created to protect pilgrims, whose very oath in the beginning pledged allegiance to the Holy Mother Mary, whose entire existence began in service to the Christian Church, why would they deny the very existence of Jesus and the crucifixion? I again suggest the works I had mentioned earlier and our efforts in a book we call The Second Coming Conspiracy. Because it is apparent that the Templar Knights, in the Temple of Solomon, and in returning to Europe, it is apparent that they uncovered the existence of the offspring of Jesus. Now, I say that hesitatingly because our present research suggests that this was not a new discovery, but that, in fact, they became aware very early on of the existence of the Holy Grail of the children of Jesus. If the Templar Knights knew that Jesus had not been crucified, if they knew that the offspring were alive and well, It explains very, very clearly why they would deny the crucifix, why they would protest against the Christian church. The history between the church and the Templars was not kind to either one. The Templars interfered oftentimes with masses that were being conducted in the church. They oftentimes ignored the edicts of the Pope, and the Pope seemed powerless to do anything against them. There is extremely strong evidence to show that the Templar Knights knew that Jesus was not crucified and that his offspring were alive and well. Approximately 2 months ago, I received some material in the mail from an individual who wanted me to comment on the works. It was material that was not available in the United States. It was about the Templar Knights. I have always been curious about the Templars and the charges levied against them and the possibility that they had evidence that Jesus had not died on the cross. They had always intrigued me. I had not spent a great deal of time on them because they seemed to be one of those groups that, while they seemed to play a part in the European community, they did not have as big a part in the world affairs and world history, or so I thought. I received the material, and I began to examine it carefully. One of the things that most excited me about this new material was about a very mysterious head that the Templar Knights are supposed to have possessed. One of the charges levied against the Templars was that they possessed and oftentimes revered a head that was known as Baphomet. Pardon me. The name Baphomet has plagued authors and researchers for years. There have been numerous suggestions that Baphomet might refer to Muhammad and several other possibilities. In the charges levied against the Templar Knights, Baphomet is described as having been a bearded man's head. When the Inquisition took the Knights to task, they took an inventory of the Grand Lodge. And in the inventory, there was a very curious description of a tiny silver replica of a head. It was known as Caput, and in Roman numbers, 58, with a little curious M attached. That is the only clue that has been presented to researchers throughout history. I had always wondered, who is this head? What was the purpose? What was the identity? Could it have been a true shrunken head? Not likely. This new material that was submitted to me provided some linguistic clues and some evidence that we did not have. I was invited to produce an 8-page article to present in the European community. However, the story took on a life of its own. In a very short period of time, 60 pages materialized from this new work. I reduced the 60 pages to 40, hoping that in some fashion perhaps the story could be serialized in Europe, because I knew that it would not be able to be released in the United States. I submitted the 40 pages, and the package never arrived. A few days later, I was involved in a hit-and-run accident. I would like to believe it was an accident. I do not think so. I believe that our recent effort has disturbed the powers that be. I hope I am wrong. I truly do. But what I am suggesting in our work, the Second Coming Conspiracy, is that the family of Jesus, the royal offspring, will very shortly stage a second coming. It is my belief that they are manipulating world events and the actual fulfillment of ancient prophecies to their advantage. It is my suggestion that over the course of the next few years, there will be assassinations, suicides, and natural death of people who are power players on the world stage. I am going to suggest that we are going to find families like the royal family in England whose prince is going to be undone. I believe that families like the Rockefellers and the Rothschilds are going to find their heirs apparent, the males who would very likely be candidates for the power of the planet. I believe that they are going to lose their sons. I suggest that over the next few years, we're going to find the loss of the males of the Rockefellers, the Rothschilds, the Vatican, the King of England, the Queen of England, and even in the United States. I believe a second coming is being prepared. In the Holy Blood, Holy Grail, in all of the books which I have listed, they themselves are very, very disturbed by the way that the material is being released on the genealogy of Jesus Christ. It appears as if they are being led to the conclusion that the Holy Family is alive and well. I find myself in the same position. Let us return for a moment to the possibility that Jesus did not exist. If that is true, then the genealogy which is being presented is false. It is fake. Could that be? Could the powers that be create a genealogy that simply does not exist? Most certainly. We have evidence in the past that the Holy Roman Church, in fact, falsified documents. We know that our government and governments in Europe are guilty of the very, very same tactic. I believe a scenario is being staged, it is being prepared, in which we, as a planet, are going to see the return of a divinity, of a Son of God. My fear is, the evidence suggests, it is a false Messiah. At this moment, I would like to take time and thank my wife and my daughter, for whom all of this research and effort is about. I am very proud of my family, and I am proud of those who I have brought into my adopted family. We are working hard and are trying to tell the story. It is disturbing. Controversial is not strong enough. We do not wish to undermine your faith. We don't want to take away your religion. If it is strong, keep it. But for those of you who are seeking the truth, we ask for an opportunity to simply present our books for you to consider. We have 4 books available at this moment. We have several videotapes and audio tapes, but the core of our work consists of 4 books. The first book is known as the Star Warrior Papers. It is the story of the 6 young Native American men who rescued an extraterrestrial in 1947. Our research was inspired by the stories of one of the individuals who rescued the star being. The story tells of a star being and his communication with primitives. The second book is actually a combination of 2 papers. It is a reprint of a paper that I produced in college many, many years ago. It is called The Terra Papers, The Hidden History of Planet Earth, in which I outlined the history that I spoke of last night and some of what I talked about this evening. Our third book is called Prophecy, in which we discuss the crop circles, the petroglyphs, the ancient Hopi prophecies, the Hebrew, Egyptian, Sumerian, Babylonian, several prophecies, and we are suggesting that these prophecies are being fulfilled. We are suggesting that the gods are returning, that there will be the return of the divine power of heaven. The fourth book is a reprint of that which I submitted to Europe. It is the report known as the Second Coming Conspiracy, in which we produce historical evidence, tremendous amounts of documentation, and the linguistic study, one, to identify who the head of Baphomet is. We also provide the scenario for the staging of the second coming. If this material is too difficult for you, I thank you for your time and thank you for at least being able to sit through this long. But for those of you who are interested, if you could please give us a call. Let us know. Our number is area code 602-404-8050. My daughters will be with us in the next couple of days, and you can give us a call. Thank you to those of you who called this morning and this afternoon. The response has been very, very pleasing indeed. Again, you can reach us at area code 602-404-8050. You may not like the work, and it may be disturbing, but I provide sufficient documentation that I think I can give you pause to reconsider what we consider to be our real history. Very quickly, if I don't get a chance, the Dead Sea Scrolls Deception, Bajan, Lee, and Lincoln, Holy Blood, Holy Grail, Messianic Legacy, Jesus and the Riddle of the Dead Sea Scrolls by Barbara Thiering, The Jesus Conspiracy by Holger Kirsten, Jesus Lived in India by Holger Kirsten, Hugh Schoenfeld, The Passover Plot, those incredible Christians. He has several works, and I recommend all of them. I am trying to present to you a story that is not just the results of my efforts, but that there are numerous researchers out there who are attempting with an open mind to discover the truth. And the truth can be very disturbing and scary. We are being lied to. We are being manipulated. Again, let me reiterate, I do not in any way, shape, or form deny the existence of an ultimate divinity. I do deny what has been portrayed as a divinity. In the next segment, I would like to talk, in the final segment, I would like to talk about UFOs in general, the Santilli tape, the Chupacabras, Yeti, and Sasquatch. There's so many things that I would like to pursue. Time will not permit. But I especially want to focus on the fulfillment of ancient prophecies. Recently, we were treated in the skies to a comet known as Hyakutake. Curiously, it snuck into our solar system. I find it extraordinarily interesting that none of the major observatories, none of the national observatories, none of them found a comet that snuck into our solar system. It was an individual with a high-powered pair of binoculars in Japan who discovered Hyakutake. We are about, in April of this next year, we are about to be treated to another display in the skies. It is known as Hale-Bopp. He has already made an appearance. He is circling the sun and is coming back. My understanding is that under clear night skies, it may be possible at this time to even spot his return. In the next hour, I'm going to suggest to you that the Hale-Bopp comet and Comet Hyakutake are fulfilling Hopi prophecy. I have the extreme good fortune to know quite well and have worked with Colin Andrews, Busty Taylor, and several of those individuals who have worked on crop circles. I suggest that their work on crop circles, their presentation of this material, also provides evidence that the prophecies of old are coming true. I believe that we are about to be visited by divinities, that the next 10 years are going to be some of the most dramatic of our time. I am sure that you've been noticing that we are being constantly inundated, constantly bombarded by movies and books, videos, television presentations of extraterrestrials, of UFOs, of strange phenomena. I believe we're being prepared. I believe it's been a long time program, but that the heat is being turned up now to get us accustomed to the return of extraterrestrials. I also suggest that we are being led to believe that the extraterrestrials who are about to arrive are the bad guys, that we must unite, that we must form a one world order in order to defend ourselves against an extraterrestrial threat. The scenario is being made clear daily. The European community has already begun to unify itself with a one-world economy, a one-world currency, and I'm sure that most of you are familiar with what is going on in our own country. I personally am disturbed. However, I am not an advocate of violence. I do not advocate the overthrow of our institutions. I do, however, advocate the return to power of the individual citizen. I am very concerned with what we are being presented with. My apologies to any of you who I have offended either last night or this evening. The material which we have presented can be documented, and you can look it up yourself. I advocate it. I absolutely, in fact, demand that you examine our work carefully, take it apart, challenge it, and question it. Accept none of it. And do the same for any and all authors. The message must never, ever depend on the messenger. The truth must stand on its own. Oftentimes, when we have conducted workshops in the past, people have asked me, well, what is the truth? How do I find the truth? How will I recognize it? The analogy that I present is simple. If you are sitting with two individuals, one person might take a look at a bear in the forest, and they would describe the bear as a very gentle, compassionate beast of nature, one who is part of the world. Another individual sitting right next to the first would describe the bear as a very nasty, rotten, evil carnivore, one who is temperamental and will take a bite out of your side just as soon as he would look at you. The question is, which one is the truth about the bear? Is it the woman who suggests that the bear is a gentle, compassionate beast of nature? Is it the man who says that the bear is a dangerous and evil creature? Is it a combination of the two? Is it somewhere in the middle? Do we need to take a poll of the rest of the planet? Do we need to talk to the scientists and get their opinion as to what the truth is? I suggest to you that the simple answer is the truth of the bear is the bear. There are days in which he is angry and which he is violent. There are days in which he is placid and he is calm. The truth of the bear is that he changes. The difficulty in searching the truth is that I suggest it changes. The individual whom you married has changed. Hopefully, you have grown together. It is possible that the paths have separated. Last night, we described how the institution of marriage began, how a divine being, a star being, proclaimed the bond created, the union not be disturbed and broken. We explained why adultery was was prohibited. I believe, again, that we have been manipulated and deceived by the powers that be that are not earthly. Ladies and gentlemen, read every book you can. Study everything that is out there. Challenge and question everybody. Accept no one Messiah, no one guru. I highly recommend a book that is entitled, If You Meet Buddha on the Road, Kill Him. The work is not violent. It is not an exercise in assassination. In fact, it simply says that the truth changes, and he who proclaims himself as the one does not have the truth. In the next hour, we will continue with Hale-bopp and Comet Hyakutake. We are going to predict in the next hour an event that we believe is going to take place in the skies, probably in September or October. We have been recently treated to some new crop circle formations, which we would like to talk about. We have had several calls today People who are asking me if I am denying the existence of spirit guides, if channeling and mediums, psychics, clairvoyance, clairaudience, if my position is that they are all hoaxsters, if they are individuals who are abusing mankind and the seekers of knowledge, ladies and gentlemen, I am not doing that. In fact, I do believe that there are people who have the abilities and the powers to get glimpses into the future and glimpses into the past. I believe that there are a precious few who have the abilities and the integrity to deliver their message, or at least their insights, with integrity, with honesty, without a malicious or self-serving intent. Yes, I do believe in ghosts. Time will not permit in this last evening's program to discuss them. Perhaps in the future we'll have the opportunity. Spirit guides are often described as Native Americans, as some sort of an Indian. In fact, our research has shown that there are extraterrestrials who have influenced mankind, who are in fact covered with feathers. The difficulty lies in the fact that they are very likely not human, that they are of a bird descent, and that we as human beings recognize only one group of people as the wearers of feathers, and that's the Native American. I believe that there are channelers, mediums, and psychics who can get glimpses into the past and into the future. Unfortunately, there are too many that are out there, self-serving, selfish, and self-centered. Please challenge everybody, even those whom you care about personally, may have been misled.
You have 2-566-7330. Okay, Robert, it's all yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Rod. And again, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. I hope that we haven't completely destroyed your belief systems and the foundation of your existence. Again, we simply are attempting to provide material that is out there. It's documented. It's available. Please question and challenge everything that we've said and find out for yourselves. Thank you again to Rod and Dave Hinkson, to Ivy West, the American Freedom Radio Network, my family and my crew. Thank you to all of you for making it possible for me to share this story with you. In this next segment, I would like to touch on something that is extraordinarily personal to me. It is about Hopi prophecy, about the petroglyphs, and about the coming events. As I said at the very beginning of the program, I am Native American. I am a full-blood. I am half Hopi and half Apache. But I must stress that I am not a spokesperson for any tribe, for any group. I am not a medicine man. I'm not a shaman. I do not hold any position within any of the tribes. I am, as you, a common man. I simply happen to be of Native American extraction. I have been fortunate enough to live my culture and my world. As I said earlier, I have been a dancer and a performer. I have been able to act in movies, perform in documentaries, and present my dancing to numerous audiences, to hundreds of thousands of people across the globe. I'm an extremely fortunate man, very likely the luckiest man I know on this planet. The Hopi prophecies. In Native America, one of the most highly respected groups, probably the most written about group in the Native American world, are the Hopi Indians. They live in the near Four Corners area of northern Arizona. One of the Hopi prophecies that appears to be coming to fruition is a prophecy about the return of a blue star Kachina. According to the Hopi tradition, a Kachina is the spirit of the powers that be. If you were to take an eagle and strip him of its feathers and its talons and its beak, if you were to remove the physical body, what you would have left, whether you call it the breath, the soul, or the essence, that is the kachina of the eagle. It is the spirit. If you were to remove the ice, crystals, the particles that create the skin of the snowflake, the soul or the essence that remains is known as the snowflake kachina. The Hopi believe that everything has a spirit. Wind, trees, rain, the world, rocks, animals, everything has a spirit. They all have kachina. The Hopi believe, in general, that we are nearing the end of the fourth world. This does not mean that the world is going to be destroyed, obliterated, and simply cease to exist. It means that this cycle is about to come to a close. One of the signs of the closing of the fourth world is the return of a figure known as Nangasohu. Now, we deal with Nangasohu at quite lengthy effort in the book called Prophecy. Nangasohu is a very, very dramatic figure. He's a tall figure with a four-armed black cross on its face. It has an enormous war bonnet, feathers that peak above its head and trail all the way down to the floor. It is said that Nangasohu will appear in the final days of the close of the fourth world. One of the distinctive features of Nangasohu is that he, number one, is a star. He is a spirit of the stars. And the long trailing headdress is a sign that he has an extraordinarily long tail. Recently, in July of last year, there was a discovery by two young amateur astronomers, one in New Mexico and one here in Phoenix, Arizona, who pointed their telescopes up into the sky, and they made an astonishing discovery, a comet in the vicinity of Jupiter. They named the comet in honor of these two individuals and their discovery, and it was known as the Hale-Bopp comet. What is most intriguing about Hale-Bopp is that when it was discovered in its location outside the orbit of Jupiter, it was shining too brightly. It simply, in its place, could not be giving off as much light as it should. Under normal circumstances, a comet at that distance from the sun will not glow as brightly. All comets glow because of the solar wind. It is the particles leaving the sun, striking the surface of the comet, that make, one, the tail and the brightness. Comet Hale-Bopp was far too bright, and its tail was far too long. Its tail measured approximately 2 astronomical units, 2 AU, which means the tail was pretty close to 2 million miles long. I'm sorry, I stand corrected. Nearly 200 million miles long. This comet appeared to make course corrections. As it approached the Earth's orbit and continued around, it began to act erratically. It is not acting like any comet in our history. Hopi prophecy suggests that is exactly what the returning Nangasohu would do. We had last year begun to talk about the return of a particular star, only to find that in July it was discovered. Now, what could possibly be the link with crop circles? I invite you to receive a catalog from one Mr. Colin Andrews, probably the leading expert on crop circles, and he has undertaken a task of diagramming and keeping a record of all of the crop circle formations over the last many years. On July the 22nd of 1995, On that evening, amateur astronomers Hale and Bopp discovered the comet. On that very same evening, only one crop circle appeared in England. It was an extraordinarily large circle, but in its middle was a four-armed cross. I suggest that we were being told that an announcement was made that on July 22nd, the four-armed cross, the return of Nangasuhu, the figure with the four-armed cross on its face, and we were being told that Hopi prophecy, that ancient prophecy, was being fulfilled. According to the prophecies in Egypt, there is a comet which is supposed to return at the end of a royal period. This comet is going to be preceded by two smaller comets, but still distinctive and bright in their appearance. Curiously, Hale-Bopp is going to make its most dramatic show on April the 1st of 1997. Just a few months ago, in late March, another comet was discovered by the gentleman in Japan whose name was Hyakutake. We were treated to a display in the skies that was extraordinary. Hyakutake made such a display that people were having night watch parties. But here's an interesting coincidence. Hyakutake, on April the 1st of 1996, was within just a few seconds of arc from the very same point that Hale-Bopp will be on April the 1st of 1997. This suggests a possibility, a curious coincidence at the very least, that they are in the same place and virtually the same time, 1 year apart. I am going to suggest that Hopi prophecy predicted the arrival of Hyakutake, and it is predicting one more comet. It is very likely going to appear in September or October. It, too, is going to make quite a display, quite a show in the skies. It is the second precursor, the second harbinger to the comet Hale-Bopp. Am I suggesting that Hale-Bopp signals the end of the fourth world? Not at all. I would like to share with you at this point a second Hopi prophecy. Many of the Hopi elders, with all due respect, have suggested another prophecy about the return of the Bahana, that it in fact tells us that a great white brother will soon appear at the end of the fourth world to set things aright. Our elders have interpreted this to mean an Anglo-Caucasian male, very likely the President of the United States, who will surface and who will bring the Hopi people back to their rightful place, and that peace and order will be restored, and we will have a one-world unity. I respect my elders. I have never betrayed them, but I, with all respect, disagree. I suggest that the Hopi prophecy of the return of Bahana, the great white brother, is actually the return of a great white companion. One of the hidden secrets of the Hopi prophecy, and I violate no tradition in revealing this, is that the return of Bahana the return of the blue star Kachina Nangasuhu is always a double appearance. Every event that takes place in prophecy is always brought out in pairs. One of the secrets of Nangasuhu is that he always appears as doubles. He never appears alone. The Hopi prophecy, the hidden Hopi prophecy, suggests that his brother will appear 7 years later. The second prophecy about Vahana, the great white companion, I suggest tells us that 7 years after the arrival of Hale-Bopp, a second larger white, in quotation marks, comet will appear. If we take the arrival of Hale-Bopp as 1997, then according to the existing calendar, I suggest that in the year 2004, we will find the second great white comet appearing in the skies. And I am going to suggest that that is the signal, the arrival of the divinity, of the gods that be, of the powers, of the extraterrestrials, the aliens, whatever one wishes to call them. I suggest that in the year 2004, per our current calendar, that is the time we can look for their arrival. If we correct the calendar to allow for the actual birth date of Jesus, scholars, astrocomputer experts, people who have recreated the heavens, who have taken evidence from the Dead Sea Scrolls, the writings of the time, have all come to a consensus. They agree that Jesus was very likely born in 7 B.C., not in the year 0, but in 7 B.C. If, then, we correct the calendar by 7 years, we need to add 7 more years to our calendar in order to properly adjust for the birth of Jesus. Thus, the return of the comet in the year 2004, corrected by 7 years, puts it at the year 2011. I suggest that that is too coincidentally close to the year 2012, which is the end of the Mayan calendar, and which ties in quite clearly with the Oriental calendar and their time frame as to when the world comes to an end. It is too coincidental. I suggest that the blue star Kachina, Comet Hyakutake, and the crop circles are all leading us to the same conclusion. The powers that be are about to return. Now, I want to take a moment here to explain to you, the public, for the first time, a secret that we have carried with us for some time, which will show you the deviousness, the fraudulent behavior, the self-aggrandizement of some of the speakers who are on the so-called UFO circuit. Years ago, I was giving a lecture at one of the universities to some professors and their wives about the Kachinas of the Hopi. I, at that time, was talking about star Kachinas. There was Nangasaho, Sohu, Hilili, there were numerous. Each one of them bore stars very prominently on the chest, in their hair, on their feathers, and even on their face. I had produced several carvings and was trying to talk about each one of them and their meaning. There was one Kachina who was bright yellow, another one that was blue, one that was red, one that was multicolored. In response to one of the questions of the professors, I described Nangasahu, the chasing star, the fulfillment of prophecy, the harbinger. I referred to this star Kachina with the blue face as the blue star Kachina. In this fashion, in this very simple way, I could convey to the professors and their wives who and which Kachina I was talking about. I wish to advise you now that in the Hopi mythology, in the cosmology and description of Kachinas, there is no such thing as a blue star Kachina. This was an effort on my part years ago to describe a particular carving. What I am suggesting is that, in essence, I made an error nearly 30 years ago to some college professors. The Hopi cosmology has no blue star Kachina. This is a term that I invented, that I have used. It is actually an error. I marvel at the speakers, at the so-called researchers who have been putting out in their magazines and in their newspapers and their newsletters that they have worked closely with the Hopi, that they have received the prophecies of the Blue Star Kachina, that they have in fact learned from the elders the secrets of the Blue Star Kachina. Ladies and gentlemen, I made a mistake 30 years ago. I oversimplified. And the researchers today who proclaim themselves the holders and interpreters of the Blue Star Kachina, who have worked with the elders of the Blue Star Kachina, are 100% wrong. It is a deliberate deceit. There is no such thing as a Blue Star Kachina. The crop circles that are appearing today have been attributed to two individuals named Doug and Dave. I had the horrible experience a couple of nights ago of watching one of the programs which I have a great deal of regard for on cable TV, and they took a good friend, Colin Andrews, to task. They attempted to debunk the crop circles. They attempted to show that all of the crop circles were hoaxes. I am extremely dismayed that programs, that organizations which purport to tell the truth have an incredible slant. I have seen other researchers taken apart on national TV. Things like abductions and crop circles and UFO experiences are being denied in the media. We are being told that these are all fantasies, illusions, they're mind games, the manipulations of psychologists, the twisted work of individuals who are trying to gain fame and make a fortune. I guarantee you that individuals like Graham Hancock and Colin Andrews, myself and others who are truly trying to bring out the truth are not making a great deal of money out of this. We are simply getting from day to day trying to produce the truth. Why is the government so bent on denying the existence of UFOs? Why is the government denying the existence of crop circles? Why do they struggle so hard to deny the existence of extraterrestrials? As I have suggested earlier, it isn't because they're trying to preserve their positions and their institutions. It's because of the fear that they have that when the truth comes out, we will find that they really don't have control of this planet, that they really are beholden to other powers, and that we are being deceived. Recently, a lot of attention has been drawn towards a being in Puerto Rico. It is known as the chupacabras, the goat sucker. The chupacabras has been portrayed on television. We've seen it in the magazines and in the newspapers. There is a tremendous furor over this chupacabras and how it attacks the goats and the rabbits and now has begun to attack human beings. The fever has gripped the United States, and now there are sightings of chupacabras in Florida, New Mexico, Arizona, and my understanding is that chupacabras was sighted in southern Los Angeles. Who and what is the chupacabras? From the minimal material that we have received from other researchers, what we have seen, the documentation, the videos, it appears that the chupacabras, no pun intended, is a scapegoat. It appears that the chupacabras is capable of attacking 8 goats simultaneously. He does not claw them or bite them in the neck to kill them. In fact, it appears that there are puncture wounds at the base of the neck. A needle-like snout is inserted into the brain. The creature is stunned and dies from brain damage. And this can be done to 8 goats, 8 rabbits simultaneously. I suggest that there is no creature on this planet that could possibly do that. I suggest there is no creature on another planet that could do this. The clincher for me was a video which purported to show approximately 24 birds who had been attacked either in flight or on the ground simultaneously by this one creature. I am suggesting to you that this is not a wild beast. If this creature is responsible for all of these attacks, then the creature has to have some sort of technology that accompanies it. It has to have some sort of an instrument or weapon that stuns the creatures and leaves no sign. It has to have an intelligence in order to carry and use this kind of weapon. It may very well be an extraterrestrial presence if, in fact, it does what is attributed to it. I honestly believe that those researchers, some of whom I have respect for, are being misled. I believe that the Chupacabras is being accused of all of these attacks and will ultimately be blamed for cattle mutilations. I believe they are looking for a scapegoat so that we will look elsewhere. I believe the cattle mutilations. I believe the attacks in Puerto Rico and attacks all over the world are not done by Chupacabras. They're done by extraterrestrial presences and or military participants. I suggest that there is a secret military working hand in hand with the Chupacabras, with extraterrestrials, and with the powers that be. If this is not the most outrageous conspiracy theory you have heard, my apologies. But it gets even better. Last year, a video surfaced, a film purporting to be the autopsy of an extraterrestrial. It was known as the Santilli tape. The Santilli tape purports to show an individual who is being taken apart by scientists very likely in the 1940s. A national production, the Fox company, the Fox network, showed the video on national TV not once but twice because of the response of the audience. I had difficulty watching that. I don't believe it was an autopsy. I believe it was a dissection. The film was very, very brief. At the tail end of the segment, and you can still rent the alien autopsy tape in one of your local video stores, at the tail end of the segment, there was wreckage shown, handled by what appeared to be a military or an Air Force individual, in which he showed not only debris and wreckage, but he showed several I-beams that had apparently hieroglyphic writing on them. I, as many other people, I think, other researchers who have worked with ancient languages, took a look at the hieroglyphs and thought they looked vaguely familiar. To make a long story short, we were presented with stills. We were actually able to see at one of the conferences the original film brought to us by Mr. Santilli. We were also shown footage which has never been released to the public. I suggest that this alien autopsy film is based on the truth. However, it is a deliberately hoaxed video in order to bring a black eye to the UFO community. I use as an analogy, for example, the Oliver Stone film JFK. None of the actors in the movie were present in Dallas in 1963. The film footage used for the movie was not what was used in 1963. If we use the same criteria used to judge the Santilli tape, then we have to suggest that the Oliver Stone film is a hoax. The characters are not the same ones. The film stock is not the same one. Some of the props used in the movie were not in use in 1963. By the same criteria, the Oliver Stone film is a hoax. However, the contents are real. The contents are true. I also will go out on a limb and suggest that the contents of the Santilli tape are true. They represent an actual autopsy. The hieroglyphs do, in fact, have some truth behind them. But the film itself is a hoax. The film has to be proven a falsehood in order that the UFO community and any and all researchers who have spoken on behalf of the film, that they be given a black eye, their reputation sullied. The media in general descended on the Santilli tape and branded it a hoax from the very beginning. I suggest that the contents are true. The Santilli tape itself is a fake. I have seen additional footage. This footage has never been revealed. I believe that in the second footage, we have evidence that is undeniable, that proves that the beings depicted in the autopsy are real. I say beings because there are at least 2 different autopsies that are shown. I find it a tragedy that Mr. Santilli, the producers of the video, have been so attacked, so abused, that they do not want to release the additional footage. I suggest that that was part of the plan. I honestly believe that if the additional footage was released, if the world's media would not descend on Mr. Santilli and the others, that we would have the evidence before us to show us that these beings were highly evolved and that there is truth to the story. Shortly after the release of the video, and after having received some data and slides from an individual in Germany, a good friend, we offered a decipherment of the glyphs at the tail end of the film. Again, I believe the tape is a hoax, but I believe the glyphs were simply copied from an existing I-beam. The decipherment of the hieroglyph is astonishing in its simplicity and what it says. Unfortunately, the hieroglyphs were incomplete, and we could only decipher a small portion. The interpretation, however, is consistent with some of the most ancient symbols and the most ancient glyphs in our own records. We released the Santilli decipherment only to be unmercilessly attacked. I am saddened that the UFO community as a whole is populated by a precious few individuals who are true researchers and a great number of individuals seeking fame, glory, the position of being adored, of being messiahs and gurus. I am disheartened by the UFO community as a whole, by the powers that be. I think the average individual who belongs to the different organizations truly seeks the truth, but they are being misled. I have resigned from the UFO circuit. I have resigned from the professional speaking circuit. I no longer make public appearances. I no longer will put myself in front of the public to be attacked not by the audiences, but by the conference producers, the planners, those individuals who are concerned only with how many dollars they put in their pocket. There are so precious few people that are out there who are seeking the truth, that if you are fortunate enough to find them, whether they are doing research in politics, religions, UFOs, extraterrestrials, whatever the case might be, challenge them and question them, because the true researcher will not be disturbed. If you can point out a flaw in their work, if you can point out an error, they will welcome it. If an individual reacts strongly to a criticism, to an attack of the work, then I can only suggest that they are not truly seeking the truth, but they are more concerned with their image. I believe that Chupacabras is real. It is a scapegoat. I believe that Yeti and Sasquatch are real, but they are scapegoats. I believe that the Santilli tape is real, but it has to be portrayed as a hoax. The Roswell incident is a relatively accurate depiction of events that occurred in the Southwest. I suggest that time be spent by UFO researchers who are looking for the truth, and I suggest that they go out into the desert. I suggest that they go to the primitives and the savages, and they begin to develop a relationship. The history of the relationship between the primitives of Native America and the civilized people of this country has not been very kind to Native Americans. I am not going to plead their case. But for those UFO researchers, those individuals who want to find out about the crashes and the disks and the visits of extraterrestrials, they're going to have to take the time to develop a relationship. They're going to have to win the trust. They're going to have to take the time to prove themselves, Because if they do, they're going to find a fascinating source of stories, not myths and not legends, but of actual events that have occurred in North America over the last few hundred years. I wish to stress once again that as disturbing as some of the conclusions are that we are trying to present to you and have been over the last few hours and last night, please do not accept anything that I say. Challenge and question at all of it. Go to as many sources as you can. I am not a spokesperson. I am not someone who demands credibility. I simply present this work. The concern that I have for our world is that when the true gods, when the powers that be, when the extraterrestrials responsible for our existence, responsible for our evolution, when they return in the next few years, we will not be prepared. We are going to look at them as the villains. We're going to accept an earthly power as a savior, as a messiah, and as a guru. I'm going to leave you with probably the scariest thought for most of the individuals in the audience. The oldest religion, after 30 years of research, the oldest religion appears to be based on a mother goddess. Those of you who are familiar with our work or who were here last night know that I have suggested that the single most powerful star system is the Orion system, populated by reptilian beings and headed up by a queen. I suggest it is this queen who is going to return in the next 10 years, very likely less. And she is going to find out what we have done with this planet. I am not advocating the return to a mother goddess religion. I am advocating the return to a respectful position for an extraterrestrial power led by a queen. One of the travesties, one of the tragedies of the effort of Ra was not just the mind reprogramming, but the change that he made in the way that things functioned on our planet. In the earliest of societies, it was always the woman who headed up the family. It was always the woman who was the priestess. It was always the woman who had connection to the heavens. Through the deliberate efforts and perversions of Ra, that has been changed. I honestly believe that the future of mankind lies in the hands of women. It is necessary for us as males not to surrender completely what we do for our families and for that which we believe in. But I think we need to open the door and to begin to listen to the intuition that women have. Men are warriors. We are, in essence, the protectors. But we are also the supporters of those people who have direct connection to the stars. And while I do not wish to undermine the foundation of our society, I believe that women need to not only achieve a position which is equal to, but they're going to have to take a hand in guiding our world. They are the ones who have the direct connection to the powers that be. If we were to imagine a reptilian humanoid, can you, in your mind, picture whether or not they would have a tremendous amount of hair? No, they would not. If we were to imagine a canine or wolfen-type humanoid, we discussed this last evening and we addressed this in our Terra papers, would we expect a wolfen being to have a tremendous amount of body hair? Yes. I suggest that if you take a look at the population of this planet, you can see that women in general have more of a reptilian humanoid trait, less body hair, more slender, and that males tend to have the more corporeal, the larger, and the hairier status that a wolfen creature would have. In fact, the gene for baldness of no hair on the head is passed on through the female. The research we present has been documented, and you can find numerous sources. I recently had the opportunity to do a program in a city that is very, very devout in its faith. I was absolutely surprised by the response. Several of the callers berated me, scolded me, yelled at me, and quoted from one book alone. Most of the listeners who called in, however, also had enough of an open mind, practiced enough tolerance to at least entertain the possibility that we have been misled. And it isn't just one religion, it is many. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you. Thank you for the time that you have given me. Whether you choose to believe in extraterrestrials or not, the questions that we have to address, the short-term questions, revolve around our existence on this planet. Did Jesus exist? Was the church created in a benevolent vein, or was it a political play? What about UFOs and the Santilli tape and the crop circles? How do all of these things fit together? We suggest that there is one common thread. We have been the victims of manipulation of the powers that be descended from the stars. Very briefly, Bayesian Lee and Lincoln, Barbara Thiering, Hugh Schoenfeld, Zachariah Sitchin, Holger Kirsten, Robert Bauval, Graham Hancock. The authors go on and on and on. Give us a call in the morning. We'll be happy to provide you with the reading list. In these last few moments, I would like to simply say, I am not a prophet of doom. I do not believe the world is going to come to an end. I think the world is going to continue long after that feeble experiment known as man disappears. If man disappears, it will be because of his own hand and because he permits the powers that be to manipulate him. Take a look at those people that are sitting next to you. Are they worth fighting for? Are they worth opening up the mind and seeking the truth? If you ignore the bear in the woods, it does not mean he doesn't exist. You cannot deal with a cockroach problem until you admit there are cockroaches. Is there a problem? Is it extraterrestrial? Is it terrestrial? Is it a church? Is it a government? Or is it that we seek to empower that which is out there? The answer lies within each one of you. I do not mean to preach. I am simply saying that there are memories locked up inside of you. I believe you should have one simple maxim, one thing that is taught to the Apache warriors and most of Native Americans, the societies believe in the simple maxim: trust your gut. Whatever is going on inside is very likely the truth for you. If there is a solution to all of this, and I can simplify it, and it's probably dangerous to do so, I can recommend this one thing. Pursue your passion. Whatever it is that brings fire to your life, whether it be a loved one, whether it be an activity, whatever it is that brings fire into your life, pursue that. Because as long as you keep your fire burning, as long as you pursue that intensity, the spirit is empowered, the individual is empowered, the ability to seek the truth and recognize it for what it is also empowered. The secret to life is passion. It isn't about winning, it's about playing. With great apologies, I would very much in the future like to be able to talk to you about spirituality, about heaven, about God, about the ultimate being. My family is offering some books. We offer in the future some vision quests. Vision Quest, which are not intended for the purpose of learning ritual and how to build a sweat and how to do the traditional, what is in the books, traditional techniques. But in fact, it's about unveiling self. It's about unveiling what goes on inside. In the last few moments, a tribute to my daughter. The future lies in our hands, but it is not about us. It's about our daughters. It's about our sons. Whether you choose to pursue the truth for political reasons, religious reasons, moral reasons, it is all about the future. We have been extremely fortunate to have an opportunity to live in this time, to live during these events. It is also our misfortune to live in this time and during these events. Aquí con honor y aquí con respeto. Aquí con el hombre yo soy co. I thank you to my daughter. I thank you to my wife. I thank you to my crew. I am not a shaman. I'm not a medicine man. I'm not an elder. I'm not a spokesperson for any tribe. I am not born of noble blood. I'm not a chief. I have no status whatsoever. I'm not a guru. I'm not a channeler. I'm not a psychic. I am not a medium. I have no special powers. I have no paranormal abilities. I am, in fact, no one special. I do not say that to denigrate who I am. I simply say that I am, as you, a common man. I am frustrated and I am upset. I have spent 30 years researching the truth. I am discouraged with what is out there. I am enheartened by the fact that there are renegades, that there are those who seek independence, that there are those who can take a look at the messages given to us in the media, given to us by institutions, organizations, churches, banks, and that you can see through it. My apologies to anyone and everyone who I have offended. My thank yous to those of you who have called and supported the work. I advocate the books of Mr. Jordan Maxwell, Zachariah Sitchin, Graham Hancock, and the others. I thank you, Rod Remlin and Ivy West. Thank you to the American Radio Network. And Rod, with great appreciation, I hope you get back on pretty soon. I think the world needs you. I think what you're doing has been phenomenal. I would like to give Rod the last few minutes of the program to have his words. Rod has been extremely supportive, and I want to give him a chance to speak to you in these last few minutes. Thank you again, Rod. Thanks, Dave, and everyone. And ladies and gentlemen, these last few minutes, with great apologies, I need to leave just a few minutes early. Thank you, Rod, and the American Freedom Radio Network. Thank you to my crew, my family, everyone. And guys, take care. The truth is out there, but it's not going to come to you. You've got to go after it.
Thank you, Robert.
Thank you, and good night.